What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 47, episode 9. We are about like 1 month from the finale. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and this episode was quite an interesting episode. I'm very excited to talk a little bit about who this was a good move and a bad move for, just because it's getting spicy up in here.
Yeah, a fun episode for analysis for us. As for casual viewers, I feel like you'd be like, what did I just watch? There was so much drama for what?
For why? Yeah.
So we start off this episode. Everyone is apologizing to Sam and Rachel for blindsiding them, leaving them out of the vote, voting Sierra out. Feels so fake. It probably is a little bit low key fake, but I think for Sam and Rachel, you've got to play nice. They did that very, very well. You have to accept all of the apologies. You sort of have to grovel a little bit and be like, yo, thank you so much. No hard feelings. Thank you for keeping me around while everyone just lied to you last night.
Yeah, Sam's whole thing about, I get it, I just want to work with you guys moving forward. I was like, they have to know that he's going to say that regardless, because, he can't throw a fit and be like, no, I'm so mad at you, because then you don't want to work with him and he ends up going next. What else is he going to say?
Yeah, and everyone was like, oh, they're taking it so well. So good acting, good faking it. I think, you should fake it on Survivor if you're put in that point as these two are. But as we've seen in prior, like people don't. They aren't able to fake it. They hold grudges against everyone or they want to vote everyone else out and they hate everyone. But Sam Rachel did a good job of faking it. Gotta fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and then they did a not so good job later, but we'll talk about that when we get later on in the episode.
So we also see Andy and Rachel maybe reconnecting. We got a lot of flashbacks from like their day one connection to their breakup to potentially getting back together here. So it'll be interesting. Didn't really see too much of like them coming together to like create a plan this vote, but they did vote together. So it will be interesting. Okay, is this foreshadowing a Rachel and Andy deep run into this game, working together, them reconnecting? Or is this just like a red herring and they still can't work together?
Yeah, it almost felt like it was to show kind of the same thing of Rachel's not holding grudges by her specifically working with Andy. Since I think Andy would be the person that they would feel most betrayed by in this situation, given that he was their friend and kind of ally. It's hard to say because I think they would consider themselves an alliance, but I also think they saw Andy as more of a pawn than an ally. So calling him their ally feels a little bit like a stretch.
I think it's interesting comparing to like juxtaposing Andy and Sam versus Andy and Rachel. We see Andy saying like, yeah, I don't actually think I want to work with Sam anymore. He's hurt me, betrayed me, but I could potentially see myself working with Rachel. So maybe it's like, okay, Andy, Sam are no longer. Now Andy and Rachel could be forming something. We saw last week Andy and Genevieve forming an alliance. So could be on the up and up here.
Could be on the up and up. I'm really curious to see how this shakes out next week, just because this week being a unanimous vote, it's kind of hard to tell where the lines are, how they're going to separate into factions moving forward from here.
Exactly. So we get to the immunity challenge. It's a pick your partner challenge, but then at the end, only one person wins immunity. I was just glad this was not secretly like Survivor South Africa. If any of you have seen that season, they did a like paired partner challenge like this. US seasons haven't done this twist yet, but in Survivor South Africa, paired partner challenge, but the whole entire pair could get voted out at the end of the episode. So it's like, oh, if your partner got voted out, your destiny was tied to them, and then that person got voted out too. So low key, I was worried, like, Jeff might pull a fast one on us here, and you think it's just an individual immunity challenge, but actually it's tied destinies.
If they did that, I would actually throw hands.
Literally, like, it was so dumb on Survivor South Africa that I'm glad it was regular immunity here, not tied fate.
Yeah, if it was tied fate. Ah! Yeah.
So in a regular immunity at the end, the strategy basically here, you want someone strong enough that you two can get to the last stage in the challenge, that you even have a chance to fight for individual immunity, but you low-key don't want someone too strong because then they can beat you at the end in the last part of the challenge.
Yeah. I feel like everyone kind of said the same thing about, like, I'm picking someone I think I can beat. So I feel like the strategy might have been interesting, but it's also kind of like you can't say no if someone's like, "Oh, I want to be your partner." You can't just be like, "No," because like you can't tell them like, "I don't think I can beat you." Like, how do you refuse someone? You know?
Yeah, or no, you suck at challenges. I don't really want to be your partner. Social etiquette, I feel like you can't say no. So we get the partners. We have Andy, Sam, Rachel, Caroline, Kyle, Gabe, Sue, Genevieve, and Saul and Teeny. You go through the different stages, and then the groups are getting eliminated. In the first stage, the last two pairs lose their vote and have a chance to earn it back. I thought this was funny with the Sam and Andy duo. Sam was saying before the challenge, "Oh, I could totally beat Andy at the end." But he forgot that Andy is cursed in challenges.
Yeah. Why would you want to be with Andy? Is my question. But
It's like Andy balance beam, Andy sawing backwards here. Maybe both of them ripped the bag, but blame it on Andy. Andy broke the bag and he went from like second place to last place.
yeah, I mean, I feel like the outcome of this like immunity challenge, the only pairing that I wouldn't have predicted do as well as they did was Genevieve and Sue. But I feel like other than Genevieve and Sue, it's kind of like, oh, like we saw this coming. We saw this ending.
Yeah, I guess I would think Sue could do well since we've seen her like do well in challenges. I was surprised Saul and Teeny made it to the end.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't as surprised just because I think they're both pretty strong. So
But Sam and Andy's bag breaks and then it's stuck down there. Jeff says, "That's on you all." I thought that was pretty funny. Then Andy's like thrusting into the sand, like when he was thrusting into the sawing portion of the challenge.
yeah, that was funny. I love all of the gifs that I've seen of that like scene.
So Sam and Andy lose, Caroline and Rachel lose. The second part, Genevieve and Sue are so far ahead of everyone. And then the other guys just get over the balance beam so fast. And then I was like, dang, so sad.
Yeah, so sad. But again, kind of expected. Sorry.
So they get eliminated second round. Third round, it is Gabe versus Kyle versus Saul versus Teeny. Gabe asks Jeff not to talk to him, which I thought was cool because I feel like we're always thinking it as a viewer, like, "Oh, Jeff, can you please STFU? This would be so distracting." But I feel like we haven't really seen it too much on TV of people telling Jeff to not talk to them.
Yeah. I also liked he said, what was it that he said? He put like an adjective. He was like, respectfully. And
Mm-hmm.
then Jeff was like, respectfully, I'll do that. So I thought that was funny too.
And then Gabe wins. He beats Kyle out. And then he does a little dance before getting the necklace. Sam's face here was sort of funny. He was like, WTF. I guess I'd want to know, haven't seen it online, what the dance means. Maybe it's a Baltimore thing. We're from Baltimore. I've not seen that dance.
Nor have I. So who
Maybe we got to
knows?
learn it. We're fake Baltimore fans, apparently.
Apparently.
So the losers, they get to go on the journey to try to earn their vote back. So Sam, Caroline, Andy, Rachel are all there. We see Sam crying about not winning the challenge. And I was like, okay, this is very interesting. This is good content for Sam. I feel like I sort of felt bad for him when I was watching him tearing up. And then you can see in like later confessionals that his eyes were still all puffy. So I was like, okay, maybe this is a good sign for Sam. He's getting this personal content.
Or maybe it's foreshadowing his downfall. Maybe he loses immunity next time. Or here's another thing. He could win immunity next time. Kyle is vulnerable again. Kyle gets voted out. Sam goes on an immunity winning streak. All is well.
Yeah, at the start of the season when Sam made the whole I'm the glue metaphor, a lot of people were thinking, oh, Sam is going to make it far into the game, like he's getting pretty good content. So it's interesting that this comes up now. I agree. I think it could just be like, okay, he's on the bottom, he's on the down and outs. Give him this kind of thing. It's natural human emotion to be sad because he probably thought he was going to get voted out this episode, considering Sierra got voted out last time. But I could also see the flip side. The Edgic people are probably like, yo, maybe Sam's going to go far.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that's hard is sometimes things can mean the same thing can mean two totally opposite things in Edgic, depending on like what lens you're looking at it through. I feel like Edgic is one of those things where hindsight is 2020, and a lot of people can be like, in hindsight, this is obviously what was happening, but like when you're in the trenches, you can't always tell.
Exactly. So they basically have to play a reverse Jenga game, and then only one person is going to lose their vote. Glad only one person is losing their vote, because if it ended up being 4 people, I'd be like, yo, only 5 people are voting this episode. That's sort of whack.
Yeah. Again, I feel like I've a broken record, but I wish that they would stop taking people's votes. Like, even though it was only one person who couldn't vote, that's still, I feel like one person too many. Like, please just let everyone vote.
I agree. And considering I feel like Caroline losing her vote was probably the worst option and then made the upcoming plans so much harder. But then you might be like, oh, Caroline losing her vote made the plan so much harder, which made for more interesting TV. Because if Caroline had her vote, then basically Tuku plus one person, Genevieve, would have the majority. Hee hee. So then it's like an easy vote, but sort of messed up their plans.
Yeah, sort of a little bit, but also, like, the plans would find a way to be messed up regardless. So
True. Letting the players play the game. I thought it was fun to watch the Jenga only really on the stressful turns, like when Rachel had a really hard piece to get in and then she ends up getting it. Caroline, so excited for her. I feel like she's just the hype woman of other people. Like when she knew that Sue found the idol and she's like congratulating Sue, or when Genevieve found the scroll in front of her face, she's like, oh, go Genevieve kind of thing. So it's like, a very good hype person for other people.
I feel like that's what you want to be, though. Like, you want other people to like you. So
yeah, I wonder if she's that way in real life, because I'm like, dang, you want that person around.
yeah, Caroline, please be my hype person.
But I feel like the Jenga game, it needs more stressful turns. Like, okay, in real life Jenga too, the regular version, the beginning of the game is so easy. Here, the beginning half is like, okay, quite easy. People are like being nice about the triangles that they're making. Only gets harder once you're getting higher up and there's more wiggliness of the tower you're building. But I don't know. You have to somehow have a game that's like more stressful to watch on TV.
The thing about Jenga is that you can intentionally make Jenga harder for your opponent. Like, if you take out the bottom pieces, but that also makes it harder for you. I feel like the game that they did this time, like, there's no way to intentionally make it harder, because because there's 4 of them, you will never have to complete the triangle that you started. So, like, you can mess up other people and then, like, they just have to deal with it.
Yeah, I guess it's like maybe potentially screwing yourself over, because then you're starting the next level and then it's harder if like you put a really unbalanced one. But I feel like because it's triangles like this, you sort of trying to be equitable as possible so then you don't accidentally F yourself over. It's like easier to screw yourself over here than in Jenga, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been playing a lot of Jenga recently, so I have a lot of thoughts on Jenga. But
Yeah, I mean, that's why I feel like it's just okay to watch on TV. I feel like you need a more stressful game, so it's more like you have those slow-mo clips or you have those clips of like Rachel maybe being able to knock it down and then able to get it. Something like that just adds a little bit more flair to the game.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it also kind of felt anticlimactic that at the end it was just like, well, it's over now. So
Should be best at like 2 out of 3 games or something, do the math for 4 people, but like you have to play like a ton of times.
yeah, they probably wanted to make it as quick as possible. So
Yeah, but Caroline loses her vote. I do wonder here if she just said throwing out Kyle's name as a smokescreen, because it is 4 Tuku still. It's 4 Tuku, 3-3 for the other two teams. I wonder if it's like fake on Blue's part of, okay, let's pretend like we all hate each other so people don't think all 4 of us are as tight.
yeah, I think that probably is what makes the most sense. Or even, I feel like it doesn't even have to be fake of like, I'm not going to like throw myself in front of the bullet for these people, but, where you don't have to say like, oh, we're super tight, but you also don't have to be like, oh, we hate each other.
Yeah, it's like I wonder if they've talked about it beforehand. Like, yeah, if you hear people saying we're throwing your name out, I guess like technically we are, but don't get squirrely about it because it is a foursome seemingly with the Tuku 4. And for everyone else here, when Kyle loses immunity, I feel like you should be like, yo, we should try to vote Kyle out. Let's make it 3-3-3 going into the final 9. Rather now it's 4-3-2. I feel like you're giving Blue a lot of power by having a foursome. Maybe their fake hatred or real hatred towards each other is just that good. But I feel like for everyone else, it is a little bit dangerous because in a 9-person vote, Tuku only needs 1 more to control.
Yeah. Kind of scary if you're one of the other people, but
yeah, I'm like, that's why I'm surprised people didn't want to target Kyle more. But if you're the Tuku 4, you're like, heck yeah, we're keeping Kyle around. We're not going to vote Kyle out here. We're going to go into final 9 with a majority, basically.
Yeah, but I guess they're just really good at being unthreatening.
So we see the winner people, the last 4 in the challenge, they get to go eat their food reward. I thought this was a funny scene. We see Kyle saying, yeah, I don't see Genevieve as a super social thinker. Maybe that's fake and they're all working with Genevieve too. Maybe it's real. Cut to Genevieve and Sue, the losers back at camp. Genevieve telling Sue, oh, I want to target Saul. Then cut to Gabe saying, yeah, Sue won't be the one saying, let's target Saul back at camp. And then cut to Sue agreeing with Genevieve, let's target Saul.
Yeah, that whole editing sequence I thought was so funny. And I wondered like how much of it is going to be foreshadowing, but then also how much of it is just like people saying what they think everyone else wants to hear.
Yeah, because I feel like Gabe saying Sue wouldn't be the person to throw out names or start a plan. Like it could be real, it could be fake. What Kyle said could be real, could be fake. I would think Kyle saying Genevieve isn't a super social thinker would probably be more real. Gabe might be thinking Sue, like his wounded bird stuff at the beginning, might not really think Sue would they be thinking like that. But it also might be more fake because people are starting to see Sue, Gabe, and Caroline as a trio.
Yeah. So this is when I wish that we got more confessionals explaining like who is playing everyone else. But c'est la vie.
Guess and exit interviews only, but we see Genevieve wants to target Saul because he targeted Rome, which I thought like, yo, this just came out of left field.
Yeah. I also thought it was weird because Genevieve and Saul were like working together. Saul was always willing to do like whatever Genevieve wanted him to do, basically. So I'm kind of like, why vote someone out who is willing to work with you?
Yeah, like it seemed from the edit that they were fine or good or repaired whatever relationship. Maybe it was completely fake and she was holding a grudge this entire time. But yeah, I feel like it could be bad for Genevieve. It makes sense. Okay, for Gabe, I want Saul gone too because Genevieve said Saul said my name. And also for Tuku, you don't want Kyle voted out here. You'd just vote someone else out. Now you have a 4-person majority going into final 9. Like that's so good. But I feel like for Genevieve, it could be very dangerous going for her in the next few episodes. It feels like this episode was a lot of Genevieve. We see her talking to everyone. It's not like she's asking other people their thoughts. She's basically telling people, yeah, we're voting Saul out.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting how Genevieve manages to like mastermind these things without like people getting mad at her for being bossy.
Yeah, like it felt like she was putting her head a little bit too much out there. Like we see her telling Rachel the plan, and then Rachel basically tells Sam the plan, and then Sam literally walks over and spills the bean to Saul immediately. But Sam thinks like Sam doesn't know Genevieve is in on the plan, so Sam's like, yeah, okay, Rachel, like Lavo and Gata need to work together, we would have 6 versus the 3 Tuku votes since Caroline lost her votes. Like we can flip the vote right now, but like the misinformation, you really don't have that many votes because Genevieve isn't working with you.
Yeah, I love a good misinformation campaign in Survivor. It also seems like things were happening right up until they were walking to Tribal and then even after they got to Tribal. So I'm not a fan of the whole live Tribal phase, but I thought this was an interesting way for it to happen, where plans weren't changing because they were at Tribal. Plans were changing because conversations started before Tribal that didn't get finished.
Yeah, like it was very hectic before Tribal, which made people not be able to count. We see Teeny asking multiple times, how does the other side even have the numbers to vote Saul out? And like maybe if you had a couple more hours, it was the afternoon and you got this information, yeah, you would do some counting and you'd be like, okay, Gabe, Kyle, Sue, that's 3. They think they have 6 votes in order to vote Saul out. Like people would have flipped. So, Sam, your plan of getting Lavo and Gata together isn't going to work because the 3 people here have flipped on us already if the other side thinks they have 6 to control the vote.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, when do you figure out, like, oh, someone's not telling me the truth?
I would say if you heard that a plan is this new and it's right before Tribal, then I think you would assume that a number of people have flipped. Even if you're like, oh, Tuku pulled Rachel in, Rachel knew of this plan, that's still only 4. So you're like, okay, Andy and Genevieve, you'd got to guess, aren't really with you either if Teeny and Sam are the 2 people talking and they're not in the loop. Like, I think it was funny just because it was so close to Tribal, but if it were a couple more hours out, I feel like they would have figured out, like, yo, we're actually in a crap position and people have flipped on us and there's not really much we can do, which I think they realized at the end being the unanimous vote, but like, yeah, you're sort of fighting the losing battle here because multiple people have flipped.
Yeah, definitely fighting an uphill battle. I felt so bad for Teeny after they realized that like everyone had flipped because like obviously they ended up voting for Saul, but then they were like crying as he was leaving. I was like, oh, Teeny.
Yeah, it's like Sam Teeny here fighting the losing battle. Like your numbers, you don't really have. Those people have already flipped. Maybe you try to convince like Andy, Rachel, Genevieve to come back to you, but doesn't really work when Genevieve is the one spearheading the plan. Maybe would have worked if Genevieve was like, oh my God, Saul, I can't let you go. Like, if Genevieve felt how Teeny does about Saul, then it's sort of like, okay, maybe you could have flipped numbers, but really doesn't work when you need 6 and one person of that 6 is spearheading the vote.
Yep.
So we get to tribal council. Everyone is talking, chit chatting, getting up in their seats. It's like a stressful tribal council, sort of, but also like not because everyone ended up on the same page at the end by the vote. So I would want to know like how that happened, because we see them saying, oh no, we're voting Kyle, or let's vote Sue at tribal council. So at what point did like Sam and Teeny realize, no, no one else is voting this way? We need to flip our votes and also vote Saul out. Otherwise, our heads are going to be on the chopping block next week because we're the only two that are voting incorrect.
Yeah, I feel like it was probably around the time Teeny said something like, this feels really weird. I think that's when they probably realized that they needed to flip. Because, like, I think sometimes on Survivor, you just go with your gut. And if your gut is saying this smells wrong, you just go with whatever the safest option is going to be.
Yeah, so it was a hectic tribal council, which ended up becoming unanimous by the end. I really liked Genevieve's line where she said, good players are good at deciphering news and noise. I really like that line. I think it's so good. I'm like, that's so good of a line. And I think it really rings true to the tribal council we saw. It's like Genevieve and Tuku, all the people that basically knew what was up and they weren't like faking not knowing, like Rachel and Andy might have faked being stressed about the vote and still talking with Sam and Teeny. But like the people that knew what was up weren't getting up. They weren't going into the scrambling. Like they could hear, and maybe people told them to vote for Kyle or to vote for Sue, but it's like they were more calm, collected compared to the people that are trying to scramble at tribal. Probably means you're left out of the vote.
Mm-hmm. I also liked Genevieve's line after Saul got voted out, where she's like, I can't believe that freaking worked. And I was like, it didn't need to be this complicated. Like, it really didn't need to be. And I also feel like it was a big move in the sense that, like, a lot of people were blindsided by it, up until the end at least. But I feel like Saul wasn't so much of a threat that I feel like Genevieve should have blown up her position for it. Because it's like, now she doesn't have Saul as a vote. She probably isn't going to have Teeny as a vote. I think a lot of people are going to look back on this and be like, oh, Genevieve like has a lot of social capital, has a lot of power. So I'm curious to see how this shakes out for her moving forward.
I'm also interested to know if like Genevieve is going to be peeved off that Rachel spilled the beans basically to Sam, and then Sam ruined the plan and it became so hectic. Like, would Genevieve not trust her anymore? Like, we already saw Genevieve saying she wanted to vote Rachel out last week. So maybe it's like, okay, no skin off my back. Like, I already wanted to get you gone. And now you just confirmed that. But I thought the other people would try to target Kyle more, honestly. I think it seems like Genevieve is trying to do a meat shield strategy. Like, okay, you keep Kyle around, you keep Gabe around, you keep Sam around. All of these people have to be voted out basically in the next 3 to 5 votes before final 5. Like, you don't want to bring them into final 5. So it's like you've got 3 people lined up and only 4 more votes until final 5. You have sort of separated the 2 groups. Like Kyle, Gabe, Sam are like the threatening group, and then maybe Genevieve even falls into that after this episode if people realize, which could be bad for her, and then everyone else is sort of considered like the non-threatening group of like, oh, bring them to the end. I don't think they can win. Or like they said at the reward, I don't really think they're thinking, or they're not going to throw out any names. So you sort of have the threats you need to vote out and the lesser people that you keep around.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see who everyone agrees is a threat and who doesn't, because I feel like the easiest path to the end to someone is get put in that not a threat bucket and then prove yourself a threat. Just like do something really interesting in the back half of the game when people think you're not threatening.
I agree 100%. You got to be in the non-threat bucket until the very end and then put yourself into the threat bucket in order to win the game. And it's like we saw Caroline and Genevieve say last week, like, oh, Rachel's the sneaky threat. We need to vote those people out. They're going to take your spot at the end. Like, which is true. I feel like maybe there's 3 buckets. You got the threats, the low-key threats, and then the non-threats, the people you want to sit next to. You can't really have too many people in that middle section because they would beat you out at the end, but also maybe people aren't thinking of targeting them. So that's why low-key, it's so hard because there's so many people left and not a lot of time. But like low-key now, I'd be thinking of like, yo, we should vote Teeny out. Nobody's really saying their name. Maybe we need to vote Caroline out. No one's saying her name as well. Like looking to those people that no one's saying their name because they're going to make it to the end and could win the game if they have a good argument, but they're going to take your spot at the end.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how these buckets end up bucketing.
Yeah, so many people to vote out. You got 3 big threats in the guys. Maybe Genevieve is upgrading herself. Could be a little bit too early. Only time will tell. Feel like you just have to have enough time in order to vote the big threats out. Otherwise, you're losing the game at the end. But also, you don't want to make the move too early that now you've catapulted yourself, as Genevieve might have, into the threat category and get yourself voted out.
Yes, so it's really picking up pace towards the end of this season. So I'm very excited to see where we go next.
Me too. I think it's very exciting. Sierra seemed very mad at the jury seats. So it'll be interesting to see like, okay, is the jury going to be bitter? Is she just mad because she was blindsided last week? But once Saul comes in and like shares information with her, they'd be a little bit more like happy together over there. Or if Saul's also going to go pissed off and then they'll become a bitter jury together.
Yeah. Bitter juries sure are interesting. So I guess we'll see what happens there too.
Yeah, so let us know down in the comments what you thought of this episode for the journey. Did you like the reverse Jenga game or not? Do you think more people should have lost their vote or not? At this point in the game, would you have tried to vote Kyle out or try to vote someone else out? Do you think that Genevieve made the right move here? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we